So I'm going to talk about communism, specifically as how it relates to the Democratic Party in the United States, which, for all intents and purposes, is communist. Lenin and Stalin, etc., they all came out and said that they were doing this for the people. It was the will of the people. They talked about unity, how men and women were the same. They did this through propaganda, where they would show a man and a woman working in a factory together, and one worker lying on his butt, and they would say, Svetlana and Jose, or whatever, are hard workers, while Sergey does nothing to contribute to society. Don't be like Svetlana. That's what they're pushing. And I have nothing against equality of sexes or races, but that's what they're pushing. They talked about how everybody is equal, regardless of race. They united people under the guise of this. And first they went after the czarists, who were, for all intents and purposes, the government. And they got the people behind them, and they had a really long civil war, and kept the people behind them. But after that, they went after the people who lived out in the countryside, the landowners, what they called the kulaks. And those people were the enemy of the proletariat, which was the people who lived in the city, who worked in the factories, etc. And after forced collectivization, which is when they took all the land and forced everybody in the countryside to work on these communal farms, they began rounding the people up, the kulaks, and sending them to forced labor camps, where most of them died. One of the ways they got the people behind them was through media manipulation. Any media that didn't tell the story they wanted told was attacked in public forums. Other forms of media, speeches, they got the people talking out against these other groups that were putting out, news against them, which is the exact same thing that the Democratic Party does. Anybody who speaks out against them or dissents from their opinion is labeled a racist. They're killed and vilified publicly, which is the exact same thing that communist Russia did. They would use the media to silence these people, which, while I don't agree with people like Alex Jones of InfoWars, it's the same thing. They've silenced them on multimedia platforms in order to keep a dissenting opinion about what they're doing away from mass consumption. Using unity, they put forth the idea that men and women are equal, which I have no problem with, that people of all sexual orientations and races were equal, which I have no problem with. But the one that they really extolled were the people who live in the cities. And the people who lived in the countryside were seen as little more than scum. That's why the Democrats are really pushing in the cities, because that's where the people that they want to appeal to live. And that's why they go after the people, mostly Republicans, who live out in the other areas that aren't cities, because in their mind, they're scum. They force the people into these cities because if you have the people in one area, it's much easier to control what they see, do, think, everything. But if they're out away from the central hub where your information is coming from, it's harder to get them to swallow the lies. After the kulaks had been killed, they turned their attention to dissenters, because it's called war communism. Communism only works if there is chaos inside the country. What that means is we've run out of enemies. We have to create new enemies to keep the people fearful. So they turned on the people who originally supported them, whether they were white, straight, gay, of Asian descent, it didn't matter. They turned on those people who had gotten them into power, who thought that that the party was working on their behalf. They weren't. And it's the same thing in this country. As soon as communism has come to full fruition, the feminists, these black extreme protesters, Mexicans, all of them are going to be fodder. First, though, the enemy in this case is anybody who's of a conservative nature or who thinks both parties suck. They're going to be the initial enemies, and they're the ones that they're going to attack, and they are attacking them through the media. Once those people have been quelled and have been re-educated or executed, that's when they'll go after the next batch, which is their supporters, the little men, not the people that are in power. That comes later, but the little men who grease the gears of the machine. That's when they start going out and, this group of people over here who helped us, they're really subversives. They really were working the entire time for the other side, and through our police, we've discovered them, and they start doing show trials to show the people all of this. And one of the ways they do this is by getting the people to tell on each other, which you can already see in our society now. And, I laugh when I see, these people out there. If they come from me, it's going to be a, John Rambo, Mad Max, I'll kick their ass. They're not going to come for you when you think they're coming. They'll show up at your house at 3 o'clock in the morning, en masse, kick down the door, take you and your whole family, and nobody will ever see you again. And it'll be because of something you said out in public, or because a neighbor or family member who wanted to get a little bit more bread, a little more cheese, told on you. Or you'll go to work one day and you'll just never come home, and nobody will ever speak of you again. That's the way that communists operate. It's not this, they're going to one day turn around and we're coming for everybody's guns. No, it's sneaky. It's subversive. They're going to slide right in there, and before you even know it, people will start disappearing. They'll be sent off to re-education camps, work camps. And the work camps is where all the labor is done to get them wherever it is that they want to go. One of the ways they do this is they bring in an influx of people to disrupt what's going on in a society. Agitators. Now, I can't say that the immigrants are agitators because I don't know enough about the whole situation because I don't follow it. But I do know that in communist Russia, when the October Revolution happened, Germany brought Lenin and everyone else back into the country to act as agitators. They were living out of the country. They're bringing people in now that are agitating us and dividing us. So on one side, you've got the masses who are the Democratic Party. On the other side, you've got the Republican Party. And the Republican Party is seen as the enemy. And I'm lumping people together here. Not everybody who's in the enemy camp is a Republican. But that's what they're doing. And they're the first ones who are going to go. Trump will be out of there whether he finishes his term or not. The next one, Democrat that gets in there is basically going to become a dictator. Lenin was the god of Russia. Stalin was Jesus. They called him, Lenin was the father, Stalin was the uncle, the great uncle, Uncle Joe, just like Joe Biden. In our country, Obama is the father, and Biden is Uncle Joe. He's the right hand. He's the one they're going to put up if they ever really try and take power, to be the face. all these people you see, that Mexican broad, Oscara Cortez, whatever the heck her name is, they're just letting her go out there and shoot her mouth off and make them look like asses because they're trying to get the people behind her. She's a pretty face. As soon as they have power and she has served her purpose, she'll be gone. She'll be labeled as an enemy of the people. They'll ship her off somewhere. She'll beg for forgiveness. There'll be all sorts of drama of her trying to prove to the party that she's really one of them. She's going to end up in a camp. Or expelled from the country. But she's not going to be much. She might have some power for a little while, but eventually she too will end up getting the boot. These people like Schumer and Pelosi, they'll be there. They'll either die of old age or they'll end up having the party turn on them too because they've served their purpose. And their purpose is to get the party in power. Just like Trotsky and Brezhnev and Brezhnikov and all of them, once they served their purpose, they were gone. The party turned on them, came up with charges, labeled them as enemies of the people who had been subverting them from the beginning, who needed to be educated. And we see it now in this country already, when the Democrats have a politician that they're done with, they slaughter them in the media. And the individual ended up scampering away and vanishing. Never to be heard from again. It's the same thing that happened in communist Russia. I don't know much about communist China, because they broke off from Russia after a certain point, but up until that point when they broke off, they did the exact same thing. Communism rules through fear, by keeping the people divided, by constantly finding enemies, and by manipulating and overseeing every form of media to get the people on their side. If you can control what the people consume, you can control the people. If you can get them to believe that every white man in this country is a racist, they're going to believe every white man in the country is a racist. And they're going to work against them. It's that simple. The sad thing is that the people in this country are so fucking stupid because all they do is consume, that it's already too late. They're never going to stop the Democrats from taking over. The Republicans are frickin' just a shell at this point. They're the frickin' scapegoats for frickin' every ill of our society. This thing with the wall is absolute bullshit. It has nothing to do with frickin' security. It has to do with keeping people in, or it's a frickin' fear-mongering tactic, much like the Berlin Wall was in Germany. It wasn't to keep people in. It was a show of force and to instill fear in the people that lived in that country. That's all I've got to say.